everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Till. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of IO, the company that makes the popular ad blocker AdBlock Plus. And today I want to talk about how ad blockers are fixing the internet. So maybe just so I get an idea, who here is using an ad blocker? Awesome. That's my crowd. So for those of you who don't know what an ad blocker is, it's basically a free tool that you can install as a browser extension or as an app on your phone, and then you can browse the web without any annoying ads. So if you're bothered by YouTube pre-roll ads, if you don't want to see pop-ups, overlays, or intrusive banner ads, you can simply install an ad blocker like AdBlock Plus, and then you can browse the web without any annoying ads. And what my company is doing is we are developing AdBlock Plus to give users control over their browsing experience so that they can browse the web without any annoying ads. And at the same time, we're working with publishers on a more sustainable approach to monetize the free and open web. And the reason why we think this is necessary. Working there? Don't want to stay on the first slide for the entire time. The reason why this is necessary is because the current approach to online advertising is fundamentally broken and very dysfunctional in many ways. And I could probably talk about it for a very long time about all the issues that we see in online advertising. There's ad fraud, there's security concerns, and more users are concerned about their privacy. So they want to be in control over who is allowed to track them, which kind of companies can profile their browsing experience to run targeted ads on them. But maybe most important is ads are just very annoying and not the kind of experience that consumers expect. And this is the issue that we want to address, and for that I think it's important to understand why have things developed this way. And it's not because the people at the IAB, the organization that is shaping the way how advertising works on the internet, it's not because they are incompetent, even though they publicly admitted that they have messed up because they realized that they have completely lost control over a positive user experience. I think on the web there's some really fundamental issues that have led to a development that is not sustainable. And
Down one is next.
now I got it, thank you. And I think one of the core reasons why ads on the web are so much disliked, in fact there's some research that has shown that compared to any other medium, ads on the internet are the most disliked advertising there is. And the reason why the internet is special in that sense is that on the internet there's an almost unlimited inventory. There's an almost unlimited amount of ad impressions that is accessible to advertisers. So that's just basic economics. If you have almost unlimited supply, but of course very limited demand, you see decreasing prices. And this is what we've seen for years, that the CPM rates that publishers can charge for showing ads, they're decreasing. And the only way how publishers can compensate for those decreasing revenues is by allowing more and more aggressive ads on their site. And this has created this vicious cycle here in which ads are becoming more and more aggressive and at the same time less and less valuable for the publishers. And as a result of that, we see experiences like this one. This is one of my favorite examples. It was tweeted to me a couple of months ago. And just want to be clear, the website, the Chicago Tribune that is running this ad, I completely get why they're running ads like this. It makes perfect sense. Also for Jeep, the brand that is advertising here, it makes perfect sense that they need to run intrusive ads like this because there are so many ads on the internet that you have to screen for attention in order to get some awareness. But if the web creates ad experiences like this, then of course it's also no surprise that more and more people turn to ad blockers in order to remove their browsing experiences from intrusive ads like this one. In fact, over 1 billion people globally now block ads. And some people have called it the biggest boycott in history. And others even go so far to say that using an ad blocker is not just a right that consumers have, it's actually a duty. This is, of course, Edward Snowden, he said that in an interview, and I think it just shows that as a user, you will always have the right to control what is happening in your browser. You can configure your user agent in a way so that you can decide what kind of resources are loaded in your browser, what kind of calls are made to servers, and you can decide yourself, do I want my browser to call this ad server or not? So the problem, of course, then here is, if so many people block ads, what does that mean for content creators? What does that mean for publishers that invest a lot in high quality journalism? They put their content out for free, and they rely on advertising revenues to monetize. The good news is that the people who block ads, and fortunately many are here in the room, so I'm hoping you're agreeing with my statement. Almost all of the people that block ads agree that not all ads are bad and that ads are necessary. In fact, over 90% of the people, we run extensive studies amongst our users on this, are absolutely willing to see some kind of ads because they are aware that ads have a very important role in the web. And the people that install ad blockers are typically more tech savvy, more sophisticated, more educated. So they understand the economics of the web, and they're not anarchists that want everything for free and without any ads. They do understand that there is a very important value exchange that needs to happen. They're just opting out of the traditional ad experience that is way too intrusive. So the huge opportunity here is if so many people block ads, and those users are fine with seeing some ads, just not the really intrusive ones, there's an opportunity to figure out how can we create an alternative, better advertising experience that this special segment of users is willing to interact with. And this is what we are working on. And in order to find out what is that perfect balance between a good user experience and sufficient monetization, we established an independent nonprofit committee, which we call the Acceptable Apps Committee. And this nonprofit organization consists of 3 coalitions. We have for-profit coalition, where we have advertisers, publishers, ad tech company, agencies, and their goal is to maximize the profits that they can generate by showing ads to users. But we also have user advocacy coalition, where we have digital rights organization and user groups, and an expert coalition with people with more of an academic background. And this organization has the goal to figure out what is a healthy balance between a positive user experience and sufficient monetization opportunities for publishers. And what they're doing is they're publishing standards for what makes an ad acceptable, the acceptable ads criteria. Right now, the criteria are mostly based on position of the ad so that advertising can't obscure the reading flow while you're reading an article. They're related to transparency so that users can always distinguish between organic content and sponsored content on a website. And also there are animation restrictions and size limitations so that there is a healthy balance between the space that advertising takes up on the page versus the editorial content. And the way it works is that advertising that is in compliance with those criteria, they can go through a certification process, and then in the default settings of the participating ad blockers, those ads are no longer blocked. That means that advertisers can reach a very attractive audience, publishers can monetize better, and users have the ability to control themselves what kind of ads they want to see and what kind of ads they want to turn on. So in the default settings of the participating ad blockers, ads that are in compliance with the acceptable ads program standards are no longer blocked. As a user, you're always in full control. You can always completely opt out and go back to blocking all ads. But as we learned before, the majority of the people that install ad blockers are in general fine with this compromise that we're establishing. So from a website perspective, they now can segment different audiences and address them in the most appropriate way. So regular users, for them it might be perfectly fine to get the regular ad experience, which has more intrusive ad formats. But for the more sophisticated, more tech-savvy, more demanding audience of ad blocker users, websites can simply create an alternative ad experience that is more tailored to this custom audience. And this is what also my company is working on. We're helping publishers to segment users and address them in the most appropriate way so that people have a more tailored, more customized ad experience based not on their personal interests, but based on what kind of ad experiences they are fine with. So this is also how our business model works, is we're working with publishers, helping them to appropriately address their entire audience, and we can then help them to measure the incremental revenues they've generated as a result of working with us. And this is how our business model works, that we get a revenue share based on the incremental revenues that publishers have generated from addressing each audience in the most appropriate way. We've been doing this for quite a while now, and by now we're reaching over 150 million active users globally. And in the US, about 25% of the top 1,000 websites are working with us and are part of the acceptable ads program. And to me, that really means that this model has been validated because we were able to show that it not only works for users, it not only creates a more pleasant browsing experience for users, but also for publishers, it really works because showing fewer but more high quality ads to this highly attractive audience is much more profitable in the long run. But ultimately, what this really has created is not just a good business model, it really has created a new ecosystem in which users get a more pleasant browsing experience, publishers are able to monetize much better, and also advertisers now can reach this highly attractive audience. And we ran a bunch of studies on the value of this audience, and the people that install ad blockers are more well educated than the average users. They earn more money, they spend more time online, and they also spend more money online. So they are a highly attractive audience from an advertiser perspective, but a more sophisticated, more demanding audience that you can't reach by showing them intrusive overlay ads, but you can reach them if you engage with them in a respectful way on their own terms, instead of trying to force ads on them that they clearly don't want to see. So that's really my conclusion here, that there needs to be a constructive approach to ad blocking. Ad blocking is a fundamental part of the web, and we need to make sure that users have the ability to have control over their browsing experience. They need to be in control of what's happening in their browser, but there has to be a constructive approach to this, because we need to make sure that we maintain a good foundation for a free and open web that is accessible for everybody. And this is what we've been able to prove, that there can be a new approach to an advertising model. There can be a new approach to a healthier, more sustainable ecosystem. And this is what I want to invite everybody to be part of it. Either if you're a user, you can download AdBlock Plus. It's completely free, and then you have a much better browsing experience, and you can become part of this more sustainable ecosystem. And if you're a website owner, an ad tech company, or an advertiser, you can join the Acceptable Ads program and make sure we really build up this much more sustainable advertising ecosystem in a healthy and transparent way. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And I believe we have a bit more time, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss this with you. Take any questions from the audience?
I have a question. Are you working with some of the Indian companies in partnership or making it available in India on a larger scale where the companies and even the startups, they can participate in such a program?
So you're asking if we already have partnerships established in India around this?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a few, but that's part of the reason why I'm here is because we want to do more of that. We have a handful of partners here locally in India that we're working with, and this is really the entire idea of this ecosystem that we want to build, is we want to make it accessible to everybody. So we don't necessarily have to be running the entire program. For example, there are other ad blockers that are part of the Acceptable Ads program, and there are ad tech companies that provide specific solutions for the Acceptable Ads program. And we see ourselves really as enablers of the ecosystem. So we are always looking for partners across the entire globe.
I would like to have a few of your minutes after this so that I can sit with you and we can speak on this.
Absolutely, I love that.
Yeah.
We have seen that there are many posts over the internet that say that these ad blocks also collect the user data. So does AdBlock Plus is also like related to any such thing, or do they act like?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Like there are ad blockers which collect user data also. While we install them as a browser extension. So like do they also does AdBlock Plus also collects such data?
No, as AdBlock Plus, we don't collect any data on our users. So AdBlock Plus is completely open source. So everybody can see what we're doing, and we have this policy that we don't collect any data at all. The only connection that is ever made to our service is so that we can update filter lists, so that as a user you always have the most recent version, but we don't collect any data on where you browse, because from a philosophical standpoint, we want to be a very privacy-focused company, and we don't have any need for that data because that's not our business model, and that's why we rather want to not collect anything at all than to ever compromise our relationship with the user.
Can we have other questions offline because the next session is about to start?
Okay, I'll be around, so I'd love to discuss this further. If there are any more questions, then feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.